Hello everyone, today we're going to discuss trigonometric equations. The first equation we're going to solve is sine of x equals to 1. So in order to solve this equation we have to think about the unit circle and think which angles their sine is 1. The sine is the y coordinate, so of course the only point on the unit circle where the y is 1 is the point 0, 1, and the angle that corresponds to it is pi over 2 or 90 degrees. That means that x is pi over 2 or 90 degrees. Pay attention, we could also say that the solution would be pi over 2 plus 2 pi, meaning 90 degrees plus 360 degrees. So x could be 90 degrees, or then it can be 90 plus 360, that's 450 degrees, or 5 pi over 2, etc. Meaning there are infinite solutions. We can keep circling the circle. Another equation we're going to solve is cosine of x equals minus half. Then here we have to think once again about the unit circle, which angles their cosine is minus half. Pay attention, minus half is here. The cosine, of course, is the x coordinate. Therefore, the angles that their cosine is minus half is this is the first angle. This angle, of course, is 120 degrees, or 2 pi over 3 radians. Therefore, x is equal to 2 pi over 3, or 120 degrees. Then there is another angle, of course. This point here also has this point, for example, is minus half root 3 over 2. This point is minus half minus root 3 over 2. Therefore, this angle is also an angle whose cosine is minus half. This angle is 180 plus 60, that's 240 degrees, or 4 pi over 3. That's the second angle. And of course, we could say that an equivalent angle to 120 is 120 plus 360. That means the x3 would be 480 degrees, or the equivalent in radians, and then an x4 would be 240 plus 360 degrees, that is 600 degrees, etc. There are infinite solutions. Keep circling the circle. Another equation we're going to solve is sine of 2x equals minus root 3 over 2. Again, where in the circle the y is minus root 3 over 2. One angle we already know it's here, meaning this, so the angle, one angle for sure is 4 pi over 3, or 240 degrees. Now 2x, that's what 2x should equal to. Therefore, if 2x is equal to this angle, we just divide by 2 to solve for x. Therefore, x1 is 2 pi over 3, or 120 degrees. Of course, another angle with the same, that corresponds to a point with the same y coordinate, this point, which is 1/2 minus 3 over 2. The corresponding angle here is, of course, 300 degrees. That means 5 pi over 3, or 300 degrees, and that means that x2 is equal to 5 pi over 6, or 150 degrees. Once again, we can continue again to add 360 to 240, so we can say that 2x is also equal to 600 degrees, and then x3 is 300 degrees, or add 360, meaning say 2x is equal to 660, and therefore x4 is equal to 330, and we can keep adding 360 degrees and add infinite solutions. Why is this relevant? Because sometimes, for example, we could say find a solution between find all the solutions between 0 and 2 pi. So here, for example, one solution, all the solutions between 0 and 2 pi are 2 pi over 3, which is 120 degrees, 5 pi over 6, which is 150 degrees, 300 is also between 0 and 2 pi. It's less than 360 degrees. That is 5 pi over 3. And 330 is also, that means that is 11 pi over 6, meaning in this case, if we're requested to find all the solution between 0 and 2 pi, then we would have to keep going and finding all these 4 solutions. The next solution, x5, is already beyond 360 or beyond 2 pi. Another example, or another equation we're going to solve is cosine of x equals sine of 2x. Here the first step is to use a double angle identity, meaning instead of sine of 2x, write 2 times sine of x times cos of x. The typical mistakes students do is cancel cos of x with cos of x. That of course is not correct, since, for example, if you have 2x equals 3x and you divide by x, you get 2 equals 3, which of course is absurd. This happens because it is possible for x to be 0, and when you cancel x, you're dividing by 0, and that generates contradiction. So do not divide. Just subtract cos of x, obtain a 0. So if I subtract cos of x, I get 2 sine of x cos of x minus cos of x equals 0, and then I take common factor cos of x, which gives 2 sine of x minus 1 in the parentheses. And again, here we have a times b equals 0, and therefore either cos of x is 0 or 2 sine of x minus 1 is 0. Let's assume for a second the question also requests to find all the solutions between 0 and 3 pi this time. We need to find all the solutions between 0 and 3 pi. So cos of x equals 0, it will be 0. Cos of x is 0 for pi over 2, 90 degrees. Then the next time for 270 degrees, 3 pi over 2. And the next time for 5 pi over 2, which is still less than 3 pi. The next solution is already beyond 3 pi. Here we add 1 and divide by 2, so sine of x is equal to half. That gives another number of solutions. So x4 is pi over 6, 30 degrees. x5 is 5 pi over 6, 150 degrees. 150 degrees here. The sine of 150 degrees is also 1/2. And then x6 is 360 plus 30, so 390 degrees. Okay, so that is 13 pi over 6. Okay, that's 300, right here, 390 degrees. And then the next one is also still less than 3 pi. It is 360 plus 150 degrees. 360 plus 100, that's 510 degrees. So it's already in radians, so it's 2 pi plus 5 pi over 6. That is 17 pi over 6. These are the trigonometric equations. Just a last trigonometric equation that I would like to solve is, for example, one with tangent. So tan, for example, tan of 4x minus 1 equals 1. So here the question is, again, if you think about, let's make it equal to minus 1, more interesting. If you think about the unit circle, you just have to think for what angle is the tan minus 1. The tan, of course, is the slope of this line. Therefore, the slope, this is a line whose slope is minus 1. Therefore, the angle are this one, which is 3 pi over 4, or 135 degrees. The slope, of course, of this line is minus 1. And, or this angle, which of course is 315 degrees, which is 7 pi over 4, 7 times 45. Therefore, 4x minus 1, which is the angle, has to be equal to either 3 pi over 4, or 4x minus 1 should be equal to 7 pi over 4. From here we add 1 and divide by 4, so x1 is 3 pi over 16 plus 1 over 4, and x2 is 7 pi over 16 plus 1 over 4. Of course, we could also continue and say that 4x minus 1 could also be equal to 360 plus, meaning we would say this is equal to 3 pi over 4 plus 360 degrees, meaning plus 2 pi. That means 11 pi over 4. And once again, so x3 would be 11 pi over 16 plus 1 over 4. And we could keep going. Again, add here 2 pi and keep going.